Hey everyone, and welcome back to Better Together, the podcast where we share the real stories, the hard-earned lessons, and practical insights from founders and leaders to help you grow your business. I'm your host, Shawn Sundsvold, here with my partner in business and in life, Kelly Sundsvold. Today we're diving into storytelling, specifically how to tell the right story for your brand with someone who has spent his entire career at the highest levels of the industry. Our guest is Rich Bornstein, founder of Bornstein Media. He has held leadership roles at places like Warner Brothers, Paramount Pictures, and the Samuel Goldwyn Company, helping shape campaigns seen by millions and contributing to award-winning work. Rich has spent his lifetime behind the camera crafting stories, and across hundreds of projects, one pattern kept showing up. The work that truly moved people wasn't always the biggest or the most polished. It was the work where everyone involved could clearly articulate why it mattered. Today, Rich helps founders and leadership teams find that clarity first. He's here not only to share insights from his incredible career, but to give you the practical ways to think about and tell your brand story more effectively. So, Rich, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited for our conversation today.
Well, thank you for having me. That introduction was great. I'm trying to figure out who you're talking about there, but I guess some of that was probably me. But no, thank you. I'm excited to be here with you two guys, and thank you for thinking enough of me and my work. That you want to hear what I have to say. So that's always fun to do that.
Awesome. Yeah. Just looking over your career and everything you've been a part of, let's go backwards a little bit. I want you to take us back. You started as a journalist, and as a journalist, you can you can focus on news, you can focus on, there's so many different things you can focus on. But what made you really get into the idea of storytelling?
Well, I was a sports writer. People sometimes, tend to look down their nose at sports, but the reality of it is some of the most creative journalism going on when newspapers were actually a thing, was happening on the sports page. I mean, even in college, we were the first ones to get the computer system going on. You know what I mean? And when I got my first professional job, they gave us the technology first. And the creative stuff really comes out of when you have to make it interesting. The days of, when I was into it, the days of who, what, where, why in your lead were gone. You needed to come up with an angle. So that's where that's where the creativity comes in. How are you going to grab somebody? How are you going to make them pay attention to what you're writing? And then, the other thing, which, was not the most glamorous thing that I did, but I think it helped give me some foundation. I was assigned to do like 3 feature stories a week on, I don't want to say offbeat, but they were like, it was for another section of the paper because they wanted to get the advertising stuff. So they wanted me to write these stories so people from outside of the area would, feel like they were being appreciated. I mean, those angles are tough. When you're writing about the scorekeeper, that's been doing it for 4 years, the son of somebody who was famous, who's now coaching, high school somewhere. You got to look hard and deep, into how to find angles and make it compelling. You just don't write about it. So that's really what helped shape who I am. And, there was some fun stuff. I got to cover Mary Lou Retton and, in
Very cool.
gymnastics and, in '84, which was arguably one of the more, I hate to say this now, but, the guy that was the U.S. national team coach, and now that we know what's went on with Bella Caroli behind the scenes, it, maybe takes some of the shine off of it. But at the time, it was pretty gosh darn exciting, covering gymnastics, it was fun. I felt like I was doing something special. So it was good. And then, from there I went to the studios, which was sacrilege. You didn't leave journalism to go to, go do PR and marketing. You just didn't. And if you did, you were a sellout. So, that did a whole number on my head. Oh, I'm going to still be a writer, which I was. I did some freelance stuff, but once you get ensconced in it, there's no way you can continue to do it. Unless that's all you're going to do is 24/7 work. If you're going to have any kind of life. So
yeah, working 24/7 doesn't sound appealing at all.
No.
Although the whole adage is you quit your 9-to-5 job so you can work 24/7 as an entrepreneur. Definitely feel that. So
definitely, yeah, but it's different because you're working for
Totally.
yourself. You don't
Yeah.
need to sit there. You don't need anybody. Like I always tell people, where's your motivation? I'm doing it for me and my family. Like, what more motivation do I need? Sure, there's days when I wish I had more energy, but it's for you now.
Exactly.
You're not just saying, "Oh, I'm working for the man." No, you're working for you. So it's a whole
Yeah.
different mindset.
Whole different mindset. Totally agree. Yeah. So you've worked for some of the biggest names in entertainment. You named a few for like the gymnastics side of things. What did these environments teach you that most people wouldn't expect?
Well, I mean, I think this is what I've kind of felt as a through line of my career is what's the angle? What makes it interesting? It's
Mhm.
not always the subject. It's what is it about it that brings the humanity to it. Okay, so that really is what taught me a lot. I mean, that and fear, the fear of if you don't hit send right now, your story's not going to make the morning paper. So you hit
Mhm.
send. I'll give you 2 minutes to read it one more time, and you hit send. So it
Hmm.
goes there. So, that kind of teaches you, you better be on your game. Okay. You better be on your game, or, other people will go, okay, fine, print the paper without my story in it the next day. I'm a Virgo and I'm a perfectionist, not something that I was ever going to live with. You know what I mean? So I did that. That's really the key, I think, is finding an angle. I have an article sitting on my wall from John Gregory Dunn, from back in the day. John Gregory Dunn being the husband of Joan Didion. And, he was quite accomplished in his own time. And he said, sports writers become, this search for an angle. And this is back in the 70s. And because it had
Mhm.
switched from those things. And I kind of carry that with me throughout everything I've done. What is the angle? What is the compelling part of it? What is the humanity to it? And if you don't have that, to me, I think you got nothing.
Mhm.
So that's really what it is. It's funny that you say I've done all this stuff. So I told a story because I helped launch the Sundance Channel. So I was
Mm.
talking to somebody and I said, "Oh, I'd always hoped that I'd, meet Robert Redford. He and I went to the same high school. So when I finally met him, we had a very interesting conversation. So we talked about our experiences of going to that same school, and they were kind of miserable for both of us because we moved from one part of the city to the other. And he went around the office going, "Did you guys meet Rich? Went to high school together." And about 10 people came in my office that day and said, "Oh, you went to school with Bob? That's pretty cool." And I said, "Yeah, we were really tight. We were 25, 30 years apart, but we were the best of friends." It's like, come on. Anyway, I told that story, and the person on the other end said, "Rich, that's a great story. Could you answer a question for me?" I said, "Yeah, sure." She goes, "Who's Robert Redford?" Okay, check,
Oh
please.
gosh.
Like, so I realized, okay, I got to watch it. Listen, I mean, I still remember, I helped when I was at Goldwyn, we helped launch Julia Roberts' career. And it was just like,
Right.
wait a minute, Julia's not young anymore. You know what I mean? If I'm not young anymore, so like, I got to watch my references, Sir Kenneth Branagh. He's not young. I mean, it's just like the names, you have to realize that there's a whole new generation out there, and maybe they don't really appreciate, the fact of what you lived. I mean, because I
Yeah.
remember sitting with journalists and telling me stories about the old days and of Hollywood and behind the scenes stuff that they didn't print back in the day. To me, those were the fascinating stories.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Those were incredible. I mean, I worked with Charles Durning, famous character actor. I wish I had a tape recorder. And he was not mean. He just had great observations. And I kept thinking, I'm going to remember. I'm going to remember. And of course, I don't. I remember little tidbits of stuff. But it's just a natural inquisitiveness. Like, okay, what's the story behind the story? That's always the one that I've been interested in. And maybe that's from being a journalist. Ask the question, I always tried to pride myself on figuring out that question to show that I'd done my research and get somebody to think. And I always loved it when somebody looked at me and said, "You've done your research." That to me gave me pride.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that leads into one of the questions I had, and it's a quote you said, and it's across hundreds of projects. One pattern kept showing up, and that was the work that truly moved people wasn't the biggest or the most polished. It was the work where everyone involved could clearly articulate why it mattered. And I'd love to have you kind of unpack that statement for us a little bit and how you kind of came to that conclusion.
Well, again, it seems like my career is blessed with, I've never been blessed with huge budgets. I can say that honestly. When I was at Warner's, they, and I was on the TV side. they were the stepchild. That was a feature film studio. So I had to be creative in how I did things because we were on the TV side. I mean, obviously it changed after a while and they realized how much money they can make in TV, but we were still the kind of like the stepchild. So I needed to know why it mattered, not what we were doing, but why it mattered. And so that's really followed me everywhere that I've been. Paramount, we were going through a downslide. So money was an issue. I mean, they actually fired half my staff while I was there, and I was only there a year. And they walked in one day and said, bye.
Wow.
Goldwyn, Goldwyn, is a very famous story that I tell about Sam all the time. I came out of nowhere to get us 3 Oscar nominations for the Madison King George. And Sam said, what are we going to do? I said, what are we going to do now, Rich? And he says, he says that to me. And I said, we're going to have to spend some money, Sam. He said, I don't think so. We're going to take advantage of the free publicity. So again, we came out of nowhere. I mean, literally, I got that campaign together in a month, and I figured we're going to be celebrating. Yeah, well, Rich, let's break it out there a little bit. Wasn't going to happen. So again, what I kept coming back to, and then I translated this to business. Everybody tells their what. Everybody's telling their what. I can do this for you. I can do that for you. I can do this for you. Why should they pay attention to you? There's no reason to. The reason that people are going to pay attention to you is your why. What is your special sauce? What is it, that unique perspective that you give, that you bring to the table every day? When you turn on that computer, you get on a call, or you go see somebody, or whatever it is that you're doing, what is that special sauce that you give? And I realized, okay, that's the through line here. That's what motivates me. That's what I think. People do business with people that they like. When you have that emotional connection, then all of a sudden they want to find out what you do. But it's only after they like you. It's only after they fall in love with you. I mean, again, there's exceptions. If you have this project that's made $100 gazillion, of course they're going to want to be part of you. But how many of us have that luxury? We don't. I
Right.
mean, we don't. They don't know the backstory. They don't know of that little success that you had was destined for failure. They don't know that. They just know that, that it's not a household name. But in your heart that you busted your hump and you got it to where it was, and you feel pretty good about it. You know what I mean? But you have to tell the why. It's not focusing on your what, to me, is a lose-lose.
Mhm. Yeah, the why is everything. Was there a specific moment that why really showed through and possibly even clicked for you?
Well, it's so weird because I kept thinking that what I did in my past was going to be the driving force. And it really took somebody from the outside to say, you realize what you did? Like years ago, I did a piece for Adobe. I was just happy to be hired to do a piece for Adobe. I was dealing with an intermediary. So I wasn't, basically they were shifting their model from brick and mortar to subscription, and they were shopping After Effects. So it made it part of every editor's arsenal. So I went out and talked to this Oscar winner, Rob Legato, about how he created world-class effects using After Effects and Photoshop for, a little movie called The Aviator. And he said, you'd think a Martin Scorsese movie, you'd have a lot for special effects. He said, you'd be wrong. And they shopped my piece around the world to create their new model. Okay. So I was just going, great. Did the check clear? That's great. Fantastic. Yeah, I did a piece for Adobe. And it was years later, someone said, you know that piece helped reshape the software industry. And I said, it did? It was literally years later before I realized the impact of my piece. I mean, I'm not going to be ridiculous, but it was just, it kind of created this whole new model. And that was part of it. So it's just a way of saying, okay, it's not the work all the time. It's why. It's the why. And that just came home. And I've changed my positioning 100 times. I mean, literally, I have changed it 100 times about, I've done this, I've done that, Emmy nominee, Oscar, all this kind of stuff. And I realized it doesn't matter. What matters is, how do you feel? What do you think? What's your leadership qualities? Why should people pay attention to you? Then it all came into focus. So that's, it was, I hate to say it, but it was probably a series of setbacks. It was being ignored every time I'd redo my site and I go, this is it. This is the winner. And then, and I would be ignored. And, but, I'd send people some stuff and then, oh, okay, great, man. Yeah, well, don't call us, we'll call you. And I
Mm,
realized I had to change my focus. And that focus was from the what to the why. And it's not about the experiences that I've had, it's how they fit into how you're going to help somebody else. Look at nobody cares, I mean, I care. I met, with some of the people that I've met. Sure, it's like a footnote, right? Some of the people I've had to get to have one-on-ones with. But it's more about the why.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I love that, in connecting that and now you're working, a lot with founders, businesses, leadership teams and helping them craft their own stories, right? What is one of the most common storytelling mistakes that you see that businesses are making when they're trying to get their story out there?
Well, just what I said. It's exactly we do this. We can do this for you. We can do that for you. We can do this. That's the most common mistake that everybody makes. And to cut through the noise and the clutter, you gotta have something special. And it's not what. It's really, when I was well, okay. Now there's a way of taking it. I'm gonna edit myself here because it seems like every time you go to any of these conferences or whatever, everybody has the Tony Robbins moment. I was living in my car and I was, down on my luck and then the light bulb went off and then I stopped living in my car and hey, buy this real estate from me. I've got this program. And it's just like, no, okay. you, that's formulaic. If it worked for Tony Robbins, God bless him. You know what I mean? I've never met the man. That's fine. But all of us have this story in him. All of us know what motivates people to do what they do. I mean, mine, again, I realized everything that I do is about positioning. It's about telling a story. That's what excited me. That's what
Mhm.
excites me to this day. What is the story behind the story? And the fact that I'm used to maybe asking an uncomfortable question, I mean, maybe couching it in a way so it doesn't feel that but I want somebody to start thinking. Oh, that's gives me my secret sauce. I can go into a room and and I tell the story a lot. So I was hired for this project and I'm clearly the outsider. I won't go into the details of why I was an outsider, but I was definitely the outsider. Everyone, it was kind of a closed shop. So I saw what it was. And the first thing that came up was some sort of sponsorship type thing. And I said, if I have anything to say about it, that thing's got to go in the back and not the front
Mhm.
because it becomes a commercial rather than something that they should pay attention to. But I'm in a room, 35 people, all excited, patting the guy on the back, going, "Oh, what a great job you did!" The rest of this stuff, and so I'm definitely the outsider. So everyone said, "Do you have anything? Anybody got any questions?" So I'm, kind of like this, don't call on me, don't, like I was really nervous because I figured number one, I needed the gig. Number two, I was highly recommended. Number three, the last thing I want to do is go in and piss somebody off, by saying something wrong. He said, "Yeah, yeah, Rich." And so I sheepishly, said, "Well, you have that card that comes up, right?" I said, it kind of takes the focus away from what they're about to see to why is that card there? Is there any chance you could move that to the back? And he looked at me, and there was that pregnant pause where you're going, okay, out. And he looked at me and he said, great idea, consider it done. And, I was lucky. Okay. If the guy had been an egomaniac, he might have said, that's the most insulting thing that I've ever heard in my life. You know what I mean? Who invited you? So, but it turned out okay. And I realized again, that follows me around as well. I do want to know. I mean, when I watch documentaries and there's obvious questions there that don't get answered, it aggravates me, or more. I mean, it's
Mhm.
just. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm getting a little bit ridiculous, but I mean, I just watched the Jerry West documentary that's on Amazon. Well, I grew
Mm.
up idolizing Jerry West. Like Jerry West was, one of my heroes growing up here in LA. There were obvious questions, and they hint at it. They go, Michael Cooper says, I want to clear up some of the, misconceptions about him, but they never address it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
They don't really, I mean, yeah,
Mhm.
they talk about the fact that he was depressed and all the rest of the stuff. Okay, fine. But where are the misconceptions? Where are those natural follow ups? So that's just kind of the way my brain works. And I
Mm.
think in business, you have to be that person. I mean, it's obviously hard for us to step out of ourselves. You have to have somebody on your team that will ask those questions of you, that
Mhm.
will ask the hard questions, that'll make you think. If you're just reading from your press release and your own positioning statement, that's what you're going to get. Nothing. You're going to get a positioning statement. But if you say, this is what this is what really matters to me, and this is why. Then you have a chance of people perking up and listening to you.
Yeah. So, one of the things that you work with people, kind of springboarding off of what you just said, is called the clarity framework. So, tell us a little bit about that, but also let's talk through a couple of the key questions that you ask clients that immediately change how they may think in that moment.
I mean, again, I mean, it's people say, we gotta do video. I bring the word story to it usually. Generally they say, yeah, we got to do something. We got to do a video. We got to, we have to publicize this, or we want to focus on
Mm-hmm.
this. So obviously there's something there, but I want to know. I want to know, what insights are we building on? There's three questions I ask. Okay, what insights are we building on? Again, not what, but I want to hear about the insights. Tell me what's at the core here. Okay, that's number one. Number two, what's the job that this video has to do? What reaction do you want from your audience? I mean, again, videos are video. Like, I hate when people tell me, oh, do you have any video? Yeah, I'm on this podcast, and it's there. Well, I'm here to tell you, unless it's your family, chances are they're not going to watch a 45 minutes podcast to get to your core. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
it's you can't. That's not a way to really talk about your business. To just sit there and go, yeah, I was there. It's like, there has to be, you have to have a purpose for what you're doing. And then this is really the third question is, what do you actually believe? Not what you're spewing out, from the mission statement. Okay. What do you actually believe? And why do you believe it? And then,
Mm-hmm.
once you get to those things, then we can determine, okay, well, if we have a realistic way of accomplishing it, and what the best way is to do it. But that's really what the clarity framework is. It's like, answer those basic questions, and then we're ready to go. If you can't, and you're going to speak and you're just going to, like, look, we've seen the politics takes over our lives. I mean, when people go to stump speeches, what happens? You immediately click off. Who cares,
Mhm.
right? And then that's throughout history. I mean, now it's probably more so, but you're gonna. I promise you this: two cars in every garage, or whatever it is. But those days are gone. So you make promises all you want, but if you speak from the heart, the first time I noticed it was when Ronald Reagan was debating Jimmy Carter, and Reagan was an actor. So Reagan shook his hand, and Reagan was personable, and Carter was all intense and whatever. And Reagan was just, and even though you may have disagreed what he said, there you go again, Jimma. I mean, he was just talking like a normal
Mm.
person, and that's what resonated. And so
Mm-hmm.
you take those principles of. I always tell people, we're just having a conversation here. When I'm interviewing them and the camera's rolling, you're looking at me. Just, we're having a conversation. That's it. I want people to think that they're eavesdropping on a conversation, not a stump speech. And that's kind of a key point too. And even for my own interviews, because I hate to admit it, I hate it when I have to record my own interviews. I mean, some people are fantastic at it, and God bless them. I mean, they could talk for 10 minutes, and I don't see one morph cut, and I'm going, whoa, they can actually sit there and not stumble and not stutter and actually make sense. And if they do stumble or stutter, they're able to cover it up. I'm not blessed with that. I mean, everything I tell, my clients is stuff that I can't do. I recognize, okay, I got a 5 head as opposed to a 4 head. Stop looking at yourself. You know what I mean? Like, okay, it's like, you can't, you can turn back the clock. I edit myself when I'm speaking. It's just like, which again, no, say what you got to say. If you want to re-say it, then that's fine. And so what I do is I have, one of my editors generally interview me. And then you said this, answer that, and then again, it's eavesdrop on a conversation. And that's when I'm most comfortable. I don't like just sitting here looking at the camera. And if I've scripted my bullet points, it never feels right to me. Yeah. And
Yeah.
of course, we're all our own critics. We're our own worst critics. So
Mhm.
um I shouldn't really admit that, but that's the absolute truth. I do not enjoy turning on my own camera. And in fact, I wouldn't even do it, except people say, okay, if you're going to say this, then you better talk about it, and you better be on camera saying it. So
Yeah.
okay. So I've learned to force myself to do it, but it's not something that I enjoy doing.
I get that. I was in radio for a long time, and to this day, I still, like, I listen to myself on a microphone. It's still like sends shivers down my spine, and I'm like, oh, I really don't like the way I sound. And I did radio for 5 years. Well, I'm used to it, and I still hate the sound of my voice on a microphone.
I mean, as long as Kelly doesn't say that you have a face only a radio can love, as long as that doesn't happen, then you are good.
She may have said that a couple times, but who knows?
Gosh, no. No.
So let's take what you were talking about there and kind of bring it down a step further, right? So, we're talking about being as a business owner, being authentic, right? And then you've got somewhere in there that you have to tie in strategy in the storytelling, right? So how do you balance those two things in a way that really resonates?
Well, I mean, it's funny. I'm working on something right now about a topic that's kind of, it's about data. And so it's not the sexiest topic in the world. And like, how do you make that interesting? And so the balancing act comes with this is why we do what we do. This is who we are. Okay. And then there's the elephant in the room. What is that elephant in the room? And I ask the question, like, are you the villain here, or, are you the hero here? Because a lot of people, because of what you do, are going to think, that you might, that you might, that you might be on the wrong side of things. Get them to answer that head on. And I got some great answers, and they were truthful, and they actually just cut it off right there. They said, yeah, you could look at us as, sure, people can look at us like the villain, but are you in favor of XX? Of course, everybody is. Then therefore, we're making those things happen because of our work. So therefore, how can we be the villain if we're making your world a better place because of the work that we do? It's over, right? Then you've addressed it. You haven't just ignored it. You've actually said, this is what makes us special, and we don't run away from the hard stuff. We actually know that this is a question, and we're going to answer it. Again, it's not that heavy-handed. I mean, but that just kind of gives you an example of why it is. And also, just because in your own mind you think things are boring, that you think they're not sexy, that they're kind of a necessity, the reality of it is that there's some interesting stuff in there. Again, I'm trying to tell a 2 or 3 minute piece. I like 2 minutes or less. Sometimes, sometimes it goes to 3. Great. But, there are nuggets. Everybody's got the nuggets in there, and it's in their philosophy and their lives or whatever. And those are the moments that turn it into, to answer your question, those are the moments that turn it into something special. It is a balancing act. And sometimes it's a little harder. When people don't really want to talk about it, they can't articulate it. And you're going, oh, man, how am I going to do this? Most of the time you find a way. I would say, 99 times out of 100, I find a way. Well, maybe 100 out of 100. I find something. Why am I there?
Right. Right. Exactly. So we're kind of getting close to wrapping up here. Is there a question that you wish founders would ask themselves before investing in video?
Yeah. Yeah, the most fundamental question is, why are we who we are? Why?
Yeah.
What makes us special? That's the question that founders ought to ask. That, and ask the people around them. If they're a small company, great. Maybe they don't have that many people around them. Let them ask you the hard questions. So you're out there and you're being authentic. What is the authentic nature of why you do what you do? Not something that you memorize, not something that you've heard somebody say on TV. I mean, I remember when I was a sports writer, I'm going back, but everyone sounded like Howard Cosell when he was on Monday Night Football. And all the athletes that I was, the young athletes, academics are important to me. Nobody talks like that, right? But that's what they said. Why? Because Howard Cosell was saying it on Monday Night Football. And, now, of course, there's other people. I'm sure, it's the same way. They're learned. They're rehearsed. They're just things that they've heard. So that's really what I try to get at founders. Like, throw away that nonsense. Throw, like, even when you're in a board meeting. Oh, we're going to work hard to make this company strong. I mean, everyone's going, yeah, great. Okay, perfect. Yeah, we're going to do this so, our profits can go up. Okay, great. But no, instead of saying, look, we have some challenges now. We have an affordability crisis in this country. It's not imagined. It's real. Okay. So here's what we're doing to combat that, to keep our bottom line as close as we can, exceed it. So we maintain our success. That's legitimate. Then people around you are going to go, okay, he's acknowledging that it's not business as usual, he or she. They're acknowledging that it's not business as usual. You just don't sit there and go, I'm here, I've arrived, okay, then we're going to be successful. That's, it's just a different philosophy and a different way of looking at things. I mean, look at you guys. You don't have the same set of questions for everybody that comes on here.
Mm-mm.
You're looking for a hook, you're looking for an angle, you're looking for what's going to be interesting for people that are watching and listening. I mean, that's just human nature. Well, carry that into business. Carry that into your business storytelling. What is going to make somebody pay attention to you?
Ah,
And look, as I say, there are the few people in the world, that are just so immensely successful. They can talk to you about, hey, I get up every morning and I turn the water kettle on and whatever. And then you're going to find it fascinating. But for the rest of us that don't have that luxury, we have to be a little more creative and a little more human to create that emotional connection.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I love how you said that. Of just every business is different, so everything should be different for each one that you do to find those stories. So, last question here for you, just before we wrap up. What is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
That's an interesting question. I don't know. I mean, I have to think about that. I'm going to pull I was talking to somebody. I was talking to Lindsay Lohan for a Disney movie years ago, and I asked her a question. And you only have 5 minutes, when you get into these sessions, and then And she said, "That's a great question. Let me get back to you on that." Obviously, it wasn't going to happen, and I'm not picking on Lindsay Lohan, but that actually did happen. So I think this is what I think that I take. This is why I get so emotional watching things these days. I think anytime I see something where somebody is totally committed to their craft. Okay. When I'm
Mm,
watching the Mel Brooks documentary and I realized this guy was successful
yeah,
and what? But he gave it up. He was making all this money and he gave it up because he had a greater vision, the commitment to it. If you're committed and you truly are committed and you're not just saying it, I'm committed, and you actually do it, I think that's probably the greatest advice that I would give somebody and probably what somebody instilled in me. If you're going to do it, be committed to it. Don't, sure, we're all going to doubt ourselves in something, but be committed, have the courage of your convictions. Also, it's not just having the courage of your convictions, they have to be attainable. Hey, I'm going to be the greatest influencer ever. Hey, great. I realize I'm not going to be the greatest influencer ever. Why? I know nothing about it. Okay. I don't live on social media by design. I mean, obviously I'm involved with social media, but I don't live on it because I would never get anything done. So that may not be a realistic goal. What are the realistic goals and how can I do what I do and be committed to it with some really attainable steps to that? And maybe the greatest thing that ever happened to me was but I was at Warner's and I was really frustrated. I won't go into that boring story. And I said to this producer that I was working with, he says, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I like to do what you do. I'd like to be a producer." He said, "You really want to be a producer?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "If I give you the formula now, you're going to follow it, right?" And I said, "Of course. You give me the formula, I'm doing it." We're at a restaurant. Never forget this. He took out a spoon and he passed it over my head 3 times. And he said, "You are a producer. Okay. Are you changed?" And I said, "What was that?" He goes, "If you want to be a producer, you have the power. It's within you." Okay. So that was another lesson. Like, and look at you doubt things like that sometimes when you're in the moment. God, I wish you would have given me some insight. But it was great insight. Be committed. If that's what you want to do, figure out how to do it and get it done. It was attainable. I mean, I didn't become a show producer, but maybe if I had actually followed my friend's path and written more scripts and actually stayed with it, maybe that would have been,
yeah,
something that I would have done. But it is what it is, but those are the things. Be committed. Believe in yourself. I had my friend, the late Les McCann, who was a famous jazz musician. He said, "Love yourself." And again, and some of that stuff's nonsense, but it's the truth. When you're having those moments, when you're doubting yourself, when you're sitting there going, gosh, I wish I was more successful. You have to have the belief here. And as long as it's coming from here, I think you have a path to success.
love that. Love that. Have you ever, I don't know if you've read much of I think it's in his book Green Lights from Matthew McConaughey, right? Where where the moment he decides he was going to become an actor, right? I think he was studying to be a lawyer or something like that. And he went to his dad and he said, "Hey, I think I want to change careers and I want to do this." And his dad goes, "Okay, just don't half-ass it." And I think that ties very much into what you're saying about just, if that's something you want, just pour into it, go for it. Just don't have a plan B, burn the boats, whatever it is, right? Just be committed to doing it and doing it well.
Yeah, I haven't read the book, but yeah, I mean, I mean, I think those things are true. Those things, they're absolutely true. I mean, I talked. I mean, there was a comedian that was in law school and gave it all up to be a comedian. I don't know if he ever got, when I used to go see him when I was in high school. So, but yeah, believe in yourself, and obviously it worked out okay for Matthew McConaughey.
Hmm.
My son still has not gotten over that Rose Bowl. I mean, he's,
Oh,
30, 32 now, and he still can't get over that. It's like he said it was the worst day of his life. So, he was just a kid. So yeah,
No.
it's hard to get it out of our systems.
yep. Yep.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Uh,
Well, how do people find you? And what would be the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Just go outside. You've seen that movie, Network. I'm mad as hell. I'm not going to take it anymore. And then I will respond. I mean, that's probably the easiest thing in the world. No,
Yeah.
I joke. You see, all my references are later. Network's a long time ago. But for those of you who haven't seen it, watch it. It still resonates. It was just on the other night, and it still is an incredible, entertainment. And there's a lot of truth to it, especially today. No,
mhm.
it's you can get me, you can email me, richb@bornsteinmedia.com. You can look up my website, bornsteinmedia.com. You can hit me up on LinkedIn. I try to respond to everybody. I mean, I do caution. I'm not a therapist. Some people try to set up meetings with me, and it's like we discuss, how their lives are and all that kind of stuff. Great. I feel for you. I empathize, but there's only, so much time. But no,
Yeah.
I try to respond to everybody. Let's face it, in what we do, it's about people. It's about communicating. So
Hmm.
how much of a hypocrite would I be if I ignored people that reached out to me? I'd be the biggest hypocrite on the planet. And you can call me a lot of things, and I try not to be a hypocrite. I
Yeah.
really try to, put my life, where my mouth is. So yeah, you reach out to me, Rich B at Bornstein Media. Shoot me a note on bornsteinmedia.com, in that form. I get them. LinkedIn too. Say, hey, I'm interested in discussing it, and then, talking things over with you. And I appreciate it. If you have a story to tell and you don't quite know how to do it, let's figure out a way to get it done.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds great. Well, thank you so much, Rich, for being with us, for sharing your story and your experience. I think a lot of our listeners will get value from what you've shared. I think just a reminder of what's the why behind it, behind what you're doing is just so valuable. So thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks for having me. And it's always it's always a joy to sit there and talk about what you do and what gives you your motivation for getting up in the morning and staying awake during the day. So, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.